Hello everybody, welcome to the 1.0 Exploration series. So I know I said I was going to do Mountaintops of the Giants last time. I was going to save this particular area for later, but I was under the impression I needed to do Roger's questline to be able to do Fortissax early, and it turns out you don't have to. You just need to talk to Fia after like getting an Altus Grace or something. So I figured it would be a good spot to put it after the Shining Ground so you can access the Deeproot Depths from here. But definitely for sure next time we're going to do Mountaintops. Regardless, there's still a lot of interesting things to discuss here, so I hope you will enjoy. Let's get started. As I'm sure you noticed from the intro footage, the fog effect surrounding the area, especially high above, is more of a yellow hue as opposed to brown, which look kind of nice at some points, but obviously this probably shouldn't look as nice as it does, being some like decaying root area that's effectively cursed. The queen end on top here doesn't drop anything, just like the previous ones you've seen in the series, and they won't for the rest of the area either, so that's just a constant change from the 1.0 version. The loot in this particular area that's supposed to be a Smithing Stone 5 is now a Grace Mimic in 1.0. And similarly, the forming rock here is a Sanctuary Stone. Reaching stable ground, we can see that there's no Erdtree avatar in this segment of the Deeproot Depths, meaning that you can't get the Staff of the Avatar either, at least as of right now. Golden Land Scarab still drops the Ash of War, but it's called the Golden Land. The Smithing Stone 6 on these roots right here is a Blood Rose in 1.0. And after the Ant Cave, Elden Stars is actually called Ancient Elden Will, which is definitely an interesting name for it. Which I could say has interesting lore implications, but if you were playing the 1.0 version of the game, this doesn't even have a description, at least not a noteworthy one. The rune bear that you fight in the Waterfall doesn't drop the Princess of Death's Assist. In the water here, there's no Somber Stone 6 Scarab. There's also no Vacuum Slice near this half gargoyle, but I do want to remind y'all that we did get it in the Valiant Gargoyles fight in Shifa River already, at the expense of some weapons. In this segment of coffins, so there's a bunch of items. I believe most of them were the same except for the Human Bone Shard, which was replaced by a Silver Tear Husk. I had some enemy drops I was pretty happy to get to see the differences. Apparently the Mausoleum Greaves are called Tombsmen Greaves, and the Mausoleum Knights armor is called Tomb Knight armor. So I guess we can assume the Mausoleum Soldiers are called Tombsmen and the Knights are called Tomb Knights. The Somber 6 that's normally in this structure is actually just a Living Jar Shard. There's no Mausoleum Soldier Ashes in this corner of the map. There's not even a tree here. And there's no Somber 6 Scarab in this branch right here. Going for the Crucible Knight Siluria. Apparently this just isn't a boss in this version. There's no boss health bar. There's no boss music playing here. Just a normal environmental music. And the health seems very small for a boss fight too. So it's just, I guess later on decided to be a boss fight. It's now just a normal enemy. With this, you could maybe assume this is supposed to be Siluria, but it still drops a Siluria's tree, so perhaps it is, just not named in particular. And the Crucible tree set in the back is still there, thankfully. Now going up the roots up to Fia's Champion, there's a bunch of half gargoyles here, and I do want to point out that they're still bugged. Most of them still don't make any sound whatsoever whenever they're doing the perfume attack. But some of them actually have the sound effect for the giant skeleton laser beam that the Tibia Mariners' summons do. This one right here does it, and also this one up ahead. So that was kind of terrifying, but ultimately the same as usual. And there's also no Prince of Death's Staff. Now coming up in Fia's Champions, the fog walls that surround the arena spawned immediately instead of fading in like they normally should. The actual champions don't spawn in with the cool effect that surrounds them, they just kind of fade in. There's no music playing here either, like in the Crucible Knight earlier, even though this is a boss fight, when they normally play the Immured song. The first summon seemed the same, but for the second, Roger didn't seem to be able to wield his rapier because it tried to do the Ash of War and it couldn't do it, but he did do the follow-up attack for it, so that was weird. And the third round of summons seemed the same as well, not much to comment on there. However, when they died, they still dropped Fia's Mist, but it's called Prince of Death's Blessing. Upon reading the description and stuff, it seems to be describing Deathbite as instant death. And then when checking the help menu for some of the things, it does seem to be calling that status effect as instant death, which is accurate, but a little on the nose I suppose. I did also try the spell, and it seems to last a lot longer. It was around 17 seconds instead of 7. If PvP was doable in 1.0, this would be pretty nice actually. Pretty good area denial, but can't really do that, can we? The teleport in the back of the room actually sends you to the Divine Bridge area of Leyndell instead of the beginning of it. Which is very interesting because it's just supposed to act as a different way to get into Leyndell that bypasses the Draconic Tree Sentinel. So it seems much more useless unless you can somehow get down the elevator. But I actually learned something new from this. Killing the shard bearers isn't enough to flag the game to let you use this portal. You actually need to activate them as well in their towers to be able to use it, which is very interesting for sure. We already discussed in an earlier video that you can't talk to the two fingers and any of you don't activate the great rune you get from Godric or whoever. So it does seem like this version of the game does emphasize you actually activating these great runes to be able to kind of progress in the game. I assume this also applies to the berry behind the Draconic Tree Sentinel that we discussed already, but I did forget to check it before I actually activated the second one, so yay. As I mentioned earlier, we are now going to be doing Fia's thing, where you have to get the Weathering Dagger and give it to D and all that so she can go to her spot for Fortissax. As we did that, I noticed that Order's Blade that D sells you is actually called Sanctify Armament. Pretty much everything was the same, the dialogue, the way the events go about. The only difference I noticed is that whenever you show Fia the Curse Mark of Death, she actually has a reaction to you showing it to her.
This is the other Hallowbrand. How did you... This is the other Hallowbrand. How did you...
Which I appreciate. I guess it just gives it more gravity that you actually have it. But in post-release, it just kind of seems like, oh, you have this. What? I don't know. It seems a little more appropriate to me. Now going to Fortissax. It is playing the appropriate song. As we mentioned in Altus Plateau, Lansax is playing Fortissax's song, so we maybe thought it could be the other way around, where they have Lansax and Fortissax's, but no, seems just normal. The lightning spears that Fortissax throws on the ground, the AoE seems to spread out a lot faster. And I would say this is actually probably easier to dodge because there's not something you have to kind of worry about twice. If you're close enough, you can just roll both of them. When Fortissax goes into the sky to do the Lansax's Glaive type of attack, the lightning bolt doesn't actually land on his hand. He just kind of goes on the side. It's a little offset. It's kind of funny looking. But besides these and the usual unpolished effects, the boss seems pretty much the same. I couldn't find anything else different. Now we're getting the Mending Rune from Fia. This is where you get the Prince of Death's Cyst, but it's called the Prince of Death's Pox. Although weirdly enough, the cyst had the same design as the Pustule. After this, I went and checked the Fortissax Remembrance spells, and both of them were named different actually. Fortissax's Lightning Spear is called Fortissax's Lance, and Death Lightning is called Fortissax's Deathstorm. And while we're at it, I did forget to talk about Morgoth's Remembrance items, but only one of them is different. The Regal Omen Baron is called Regal Scapegoat Baron. To finish all of Fia's questline line and all that, I did go to the other D and gave him the first D's armor and such. The dialogue and everything seemed the same. First change I noticed is that whenever you attack him, the name of the enemy NPC is called D Hunter of the Dead instead of Beholder of Death. Which, thematically, I do think there might be some theming of split personality and such, even though they're physically two bodies. At least we think so. Have you ever seen them both in the same room? Regardless, it's a change from the post-release version. D still dropped the Inseparable Sword, and it has Imbue Holy Ash of War, which is the name of Sacred Blade in 1.0, so that's technically correct. But whenever I actually tried the animation of it at least, it's doing the animation for the Order Blade or Sacred Order, instead of the little laser beam thing. So that's certainly wrong and different, but hasn't that been this whole version so far. Before ending, I decided to go back to talk to Gurranq, because I have been doing his questline throughout the game, and Deer just reminded me to go check on one that he had. And something funny happened here. He gave me the dialogue that he gives you whenever he's going to give you the Beast Claw, which is the 5th death root, but he instead gave me the Stone of Gurranq. So that was quite funny. I did notice at some point that the dialogue seemed to be offset by one, so I think it's just one behind. But at the time I didn't find it that noteworthy, but I figured I'd mention it. One day I'll maybe make a little spreadsheet of dialogue he gives you. Alright, and that's all for the video. As I mentioned, Mountaintop of the Giants should be next. There's literally no other place I could go. But from there, I'm still undecided as to where I'm going to go. So I think I will actually post that poll I mentioned last time. At the same time I post that video, whenever that might be. So y'all can decide if you want me to do Farm Missoula or just go over to Consecrated Snowfields and do all of that first. Because I don't think I have preference for those, but I do know I want to do Ashen Capital at the very, very end. But either way, I hope you enjoyed today's video as well. We're definitely running short on areas to do because we got Mountaintops, Consecrated Snowfields, Mohgwyn Dynasty, Haligtree. Unsure I'll do Haligtree and Elfhell together. We'll see. Fair Missoula, and then the Ashen Capital and just the endgame in general. So that's 6 areas we can do. Assuming they're all in one video, I could split up Mountaintops, as I said, into 2 parts, depending on how I see it and how much content there's to talk about and how I want to split out the time. But it's still a good amount of work to do, so definitely keep an eye out for the Mountaintops video if you want to vote for whatever's next. But yeah, if you're new to here, there's a ton of videos in the playlist. It's going to show up in the end card so y'all can see of the different changes so far. We're about 15 parts in, so there's plenty to catch up on if you don't know. And we still got a bunch to discuss for a bit, so just consider subscribing. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you again. Bye bye.